Thanks for being back, everyone. This is part 2. Again, I really hope you click subscribe and hit that button by the subscribe button and share this video and many other videos because I'd love to grow with you together. And I'll explain that in a moment. But this is Eric Reynolds. It looks like he's in heaven. He's not. It's actually where he's living right now on a farm. Looks like someone painted something behind him, but that's real. This is not a fake.
Yeah, see, it's real.
So I want to tell you about Eric Reynolds, for those of you who didn't catch part 1 yet. So he's got police and keto experience, which we're going to talk about. This is part 2. We're going to get a little bit more into, even though we're going to continue some of the police and the keto work, his brother. We're going to talk about how he found his brother. I'll show the rest of the news clip. But his brother was adopted at 6 months. And I also want to talk about, we didn't talk about yet, Eric's RV life of freedom and his homeschooling his children. So he gets to see a lot of the country by RV. And when that happened, did it happen before or after this virus situation? So let's get right into it, Eric. If you can go where you want to go, we can either talk about your mother and your police experience first, or you and your brother, whatever you'd like.
Well, to get into the RV, we have to get into my brother. So I had done 23andMe around 2016. I knew my grandparents were heavy from the Irish English side of things, but my mom's mom was from Havana, Cuba. So my mom was half Cuban, my grandma obviously all Cuban, and her dad was from Spain. He was an admiral or something in the Spanish Navy or something. So I was just kind of curious about that part. And there's been rumors that we had some Viking and Nordic stuff because some of those Ireland English areas were taken over back in the day. So you don't know which side of the war you were on. Anyway, so I did 23andMe. And 3 years later, you know, I get little updates now and then. You got a third cousin. We have the same great grandfather or something. It was always kind of cool. You're like, oh, where are you at? Oh, you're in, North Dakota. Who'd have thought? All right. And then I get an email from 23andMe and says, relative wants to get in touch with you. And I was like, all right. And it said, hi, my name is Dave Stull. I don't know much about my birth parents, but according to 23andMe, we're half brothers. Not only that, we're both cops and we both live in Florida. And he was 2 hours away from me, right? So I'm thinking I'm being scammed because I'm like, all right, and I have to say my parents have been married 8 times. So I'm like, but they were married like 18, 19. So I was like, there's no way, my mom would have had a kid at 17 and put him up for adoption. I knew probably the suspect had to be my dad. So Dave and I start talking, we FaceTime each other and we're staring at each other. I'm looking at his ears and his eyebrows. And because this is like an alien that showed up out of space, right? Or a clone or something. And he looks more like my dad than any of the other siblings that we have, right? So he got more of dad's true DNA than the rest of us. I guess we got the alcohol version, a little bit more diluted. And so Dave and I end up meeting. I bring the family up. We have, we're all nervous to meet because it's a really unique situation. I mean, I'm 49 at this point and he's 50. So it turns out he's 15 months older than I am. He has been a cop in Orlando a lot longer than me. He did 30 years when I did almost 20. So we never worked together, never saw each other. Or maybe we did, we just didn't realize it because, you don't know. And finally I had to call my dad and say, hey, Dad, where were you in the fall of 1967? My dad's like 71 years old, right? He probably doesn't even remember what he ate yesterday. So he's like, what? I go, all right, Dad. So I put my cop hat on. I go, you graduated high school 67, June of 67. You enlisted in the Air Force in January of 68. Where were you those 6 months? Oh, I went to Pensacola. All right, Dave was born in Pensacola. So I'm like, all right, this is going right down he's going to confess. And I go, were you kicking it with anybody? And he was like, well, I worked at Woolworths in the paint department. And there was this girl in the lingerie department. How typical, right? Boys in the lingerie hardware and girls in the clothing, right? So old school, but that's how it was back then. And I go, well, anything happened? It's like, no. I go, well, let me tell you this, Dad. I go, I did this test. It's called 23andMe. It's a DNA test. And he gets real serious, right? Because he was a military man, and I'm sure there's some other siblings out there. That's a running joke with me and my other, like we have a Johnny Okinawa over there somewhere. He's probably a cop for Tokyo PD or something, right? So he gets real serious. And I go, well, Dad, I got an email and it's from a guy and he's my half brother, and he's your oldest son. So then he stands up. I'm not there. I'm on the phone with him. And all of a sudden, I don't hear anything in the line. I'm like, Dad. And then my stepmom, wife number 5, but she's been with him over 30 years. It's like both my parents found the right people later in life. They just kind of made mistakes along the way, maybe married too young, whatever. So she's like, what'd you say to him? I go, well, he's got another son. We just found out he's the oldest. His name's Dave. And so then they ended up meeting like a week later. Then I had to tell my sister, Alex, and then my 2 other brothers, Matt and Mason. And we ended up, when I retired in October of 2019, we all had a family get together where everyone was at. We rented a house in like Cocoa Beach, and we all just got together, and the news came out and did a story on it. Like Koch brothers were united. And, we ended up doing a lot of TV shows and stuff like that. Fox and Friends, we were on all kinds of talk radio shows, all from Sirius XM to all kinds of newspapers and stuff. So it was pretty cool, and at that time, my wife had been indoctrinating me on tiny house shows and tree houses. Like she loved this tree house shows. I'm like, what are you, crazy? So I was like, I can't live that small. I'm living the American dream, right? I want to have a big house, a boat, toys, and keep working until I die. And then, I die broke, right? So Dave had been RVing already. He had a big RV, and I'd never even considered RVing. I didn't want to live like that. I didn't know I never towed anything. I didn't know this life. So he goes, come on, you got to try it. So we rented a trailer, had it delivered to, I think it was St. Augustine, and he was there, and we camped together. And then we did it again. And it was like, wow, this is nice to walk out your front door to the beach. That's right in front of your house. You don't have to drive. You come back, your shower's there, your same bed, your food, the fridge is the same. Everything's the same inside your trailer or your RV, and we just changed the view. So we decided at that point, I already knew I was retiring. We're like, we're going to sell our house. We're going to buy a travel trailer, toy hauler, and we're going to travel the country for a few years, and we'll find that place we want to move into eventually. We just don't know where it is yet. So we've been in it 2 years now. We saw all 5 Great Lakes last summer. We had homeschooled our kids in 2018, so it was an easy transition. I left police work. My wife was a stay-at-home, hardworking mom all those years. She was ready to get out of South Florida. And then my kids, just came along for the ride. And I can't tell you what a journey we had to go through upstate Michigan, and the Upper Peninsula, and then to be Niagara Falls, and then, just to go all the way across the country. And then we had to stop because obviously weather, you can't go through the cold with the type of trailer we have. So we come back to Florida and we visit family, and we spend the winters there, like almost like snowbirds, but we're actually from there. And man, I'm towing a trailer, I'm backing in and parking spaces, all this stuff that I never did. I was terrified of this life. But it just shows, if you learn and you do it slow and you have people that can guide you in this, you can do anything. You just got to ask for it. And I had people help me practice with the travel trailer. I had to learn everything, how to drive with one. You can't go speeding around like you do in your little car or something. It's a whole different way of driving. I always call it slow is fast. We'll get there. We just take things slow. Don't be in a hurry, because then you end up doing things twice or you make a mistake. So it's been quite the adventure, because big brother Dave, gave me the kick in the butt to get going. And his story is he was adopted at 6 months. His dad, his adoptive parents, his adopted dad was a Navy fighter pilot or a helicopter pilot. So he grew up in San Diego. You hear me okay?
Yep. Perfect.
Okay. He grew up in San Diego on the base where Top Gun was originally filmed with Tom Cruise and all that. So because his dad was the boss, the OIC, officer in charge, he's got pictures with Tom Cruise wearing the bomber jacket, hanging out with Goose and all the characters of it, because his dad was somebody on the base, so he got behind the scenes access. He has stories of getting caught sneaking off the base in San Diego, and just awesome, like his first girlfriend, like everything's just so freaking crazy to me, because here he is on the other side of the country. Well, his dad retires. Dave's a senior. His dad goes back, his adoptive dad goes back to West Virginia, where he grew up. Dave's now finds himself San Diego kid. Now he's in West Virginia, senior year in high school. Hated it. Cold. Where's the beach, bro? He's just like, oh my God, I can't take it. He's like, Florida has beaches. So he went down to Orlando, applied, got to be a cop, and he spent the next 30 years. I mean, he's now retired. He travels in an RV as well, but he does have a home base at home in Orlando. He's a little probably smarter with his money than I was. And he did do 10 more years than I did too. So, I mean, you know, I got out early to save my health and to be with my family and, you know, not do some of the stuff that I saw happen to other cops and, you know, die early and stuff like that. But yeah, Dave finally got to meet his mom, his birth mom. She, during COVID, was battling cancer. So it was kind of weird because we're looking at all our cousins because we're matching up our DNA. Like, who's that guy? I'm like, oh, that's cousin so-and-so on my dad's sister's side or something like that. Well, there's 3 people there that weren't on my list. And you can kind of match up the same, you know, everything's kind of in order. And then there's 3 oddball things. You're like, who's that? I'm like, that's not my side. I go, that's your birth mom's side. So he reaches out through 23andMe to one of the people that he matched up with. And he finally finds 2 more sisters on the mom's side. And he finds his mom. Well, she's battling cancer. COVID hits. He can't see her, all this stuff. So he goes almost a year and a half before he finally meets his birth mom. And it's kind of, my dad's situation was, there's rumors going around that she was pregnant, he was going to marry her, and then she wasn't pregnant, and then she was promised to somebody else, and my dad left town. That was all we kind of knew. Well, turns out, you know, I guess the new guy that this lady was going to marry didn't want to raise somebody else's kid. So she had put him up for adoption after 6 months. So she lived with this kid for 6 months. She had notes about his favorite foods and blankets. I mean, it's probably heartbreaking for this lady to give up her kid, right? And turns out, talking to the sisters, there was always this sadness in her, you know? And I guess their dad passed away. And then the mom finally told the daughters about the son. So that story, that clip you played on Lester Holt and NBC, they actually had watched that. And they knew they had a brother out there. And they actually made the joke about, hey, imagine that cop's our brother, you know? And then they meet and they're like, holy cow, that's the guy we saw on the news.
Wow.
Right? So he finally meets his mom. It had to be awkward. He was telling her, hey, you had to do what you had to do back then. I had a great life, you know, don't have any regrets, you know, and he's able, I think, to relieve her of any of that guilt, you know, that she was probably feeling, that burden she was carrying with her all these years. Probably why she got cancer anyway.
Yeah.
So, and then she dies 2 months later.
Yeah, I
Passes
felt
away.
like when you said he couldn't see her for COVID, I thought she's probably going to hold out to see her son. Of
Isn't
course.
that crazy?
Yeah.
She totally did, man.
Yeah.
Just like you hear it all the time, people holding on or something like that. And, you know, and it's sad, but at least he got to see her and say, hey, you know, I'm all right. So she can die in peace, you know?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's kind of the quick synopsis of that side. His adoptive dad, his adoptive parents, his mom had died 20 years prior, and his dad had died the year before on Father's Day. And I have the same birthday as his adopted dad, but different years, obviously, you know. So it's just weird, like all of a sudden another guy comes in his life, you know, and here his younger brother, he never knew about it. Dave doesn't have any kids of his own, never had any of those siblings. So his wife now had 2 kids from a previous marriage. So that was his whole life. He's all part of their family because he had never really had a family of his own, really. I mean, after his parents passed away. And now he's like 8 siblings.
Oh
He's got
my
like
gosh.
15 nieces and nephews. And we're like, your Christmas bill just got more expensive now, bud. You
That's
know?
great.
So yeah, but it's been awesome. We retired together. I'm actually seeing him tomorrow. He's in Cooperstown. So we're driving up somewhere else, another family gathering. He's going to come meet up. So I don't know, I'm looking forward. Every time I see him, it's always like, man, I just look at him. We're like, and when we first found out, it's kind of funny. We're talking on the phone and I was like, man, I got to make a drink. I was all freaking nervous and stuff. He's like, what you drinking? I go, Tito's. He's like, I'm drinking Tito's. I'm like, we are brothers, you know, but obviously Tito's a popular brand, but it was just kind of a funny moment. And then he's like, how old are you? I go, I'm 49. He's like, oh, I'm 50. I guess that makes me the big brother. He's like, man. I go, I did all the work. You did nothing. And then I'm like, how old? I don't know, how tall are you? It's like 5'10". I go, I'm 6 foot. I got you, dog. He's like, damn it. So, yeah, they're beaver damming again. So he it's like, hey, we already started with the sibling rivalry at that point, just kind of messing with each other, you know. But it's been great. You know, we auditioned for The Amazing Race, like I was telling you. We sent in we were going to be part, I think, season 33. And then COVID hit and everything just kind of putting on the back burner. And then the summer of riots where they hated cops. So we were like, I think we're done. I think we just made it to the you know, bottom of the barrel. They're not going to call us back again, but it
Mm.
was still fun. It was such a great path to go on. And then he got us into the travel trailer life. So it's just been amazing. I mean, this kind of freedom all the time, fresh air. You were talking about vitamin D and what's good for the mind, and earthing, you know, getting your hands dirty with mud and just not crap. If I do the pig pen, I clean it out. I'm not grabbing it. I'm using, I got boots and stuff like that. So it's kind of funny. I'm now a farmer, so I should own maybe a keto farmer or something like that. Farmer keto.
Grass-fed beef. If it's okay with you and everyone, I'm going to play the clip. It was in part 2. I didn't play the whole thing. So you can skip ahead a minute and a half for those of you who already saw the clip. But is it okay if I show you and your brother on the news?
Absolutely.
All right, let's see if this will work again. I'm going to hit the share button. And we're going to see you and your brother. Here we go. I'm going to press play.
They held a news conference for a different kind of joint task force.
Being a cop's being a cop. So
Sergeant David Stahl is with the Orange County Sheriff's Office and recently took a DNA test, revealing new information about his family.
I was expecting to see cousins and stuff like that. Top of the list says half brother. I'm like, I hadn't considered that possibility.
He quickly wrote an email. According to 23andMe, we are half brothers. I was adopted as an infant and have very little knowledge of my family history. A message gladly received by Boynton Beach police officer Eric Reynolds.
For me, it's really cool. I got a big brother now. I've never had a big brother.
The long-lost siblings who share a father finally met in person last month and are just getting started.
My wife is just always like, you texting your brother again? And of course, because you've got 50 years to make up for.
I was nervous about him showing up last night, coming over for dinner. And I was like, he's coming. Like, wait for Santa Claus or something.
DNA solving a mystery these officers never even knew existed. Joe Fryer, NBC News.
Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking out.
That was beautiful. This happened last time. I shut it down. I got to shut it down again. I don't know why this screen share kept going. So that is so beautiful. I do have a question about that unless you have some comments, but so he influenced you in the RV life. Did you influence him in your keto or carnivore life?
People ask me that. He does like dirty keto. He still enjoys a beer and eats his breads and stuff. He's got a little bit of a retirement belly going on. And I'm going to see him tomorrow. And if it's bigger, we're going to have a little chat, because I don't want him dying of any heart disease or getting, becoming a patient of modern medicine for life, so.
I'd love to get into your mom in one moment. First, I want to ask you, do you have some keto tips for us, for those that are struggling to lose a little bit of belly weight? Maybe we're in pretty good shape, but we still got some belly weight. For the women, maybe we've got some stuff on our butt and legs and arms. Any keto tips or carnivore tips?
I would say start looking at intermittent fasting. If you can fast and really, because that's how you start to really, your body starts to go through some change, especially if you do a 24 to 48 hour fast, which is really hard for a lot of newbies. I can only do about 24 hours. And then I need working on farm, I need the energy, but watch the sugars and watch the soft drinks and the juices. Just get that stuff out of the house. And follow Dr. Ken Berry's videos. I'm telling you, watch that dude, Intro to Keto. Start off real simple. Just make little simple things and you'll already feel the difference within a couple of weeks. But you got to get the family on board. If that stuff's in the house, in the cabinets, you're going to eat it. You got to get it out. And they got to be on board.
I listen to Dr. Ken Berry too. All those doctors, Dr. Sean Baker, a lot of those doctors.
Oh yeah, I love Sean Baker.
I want to clarify, I'm not carnivore. What I call, I'm starting to transition my show, because my show was very spiritual to help people with anxiety. I want to show them, hey, I have friends who've been to another realm, and I feel that helps with anxiety, but also the way we eat. I realized I had this, I talked about in part 1, but so I'll keep it more brief. I had doom, I had anxiety. I didn't want to wake up in the morning, and I could tell you all my problems, because we all have very severe problems from time to time, but I realized it's what I'm putting in my body. Like you said, you had PTSD from being a police officer involved in a shooting. I had PTSD from, I don't know, from life. I had certain things coming at me, and I really think mostly it's nutritional. But what I wanted to say was, that's why I have my show. It's called Growth Factor. I want to grow by listening to you, learning from all of you in the comments, listening to people like Eric. And I was able to get rid of it. I do not have that anxiety. I'm not full carnivore. I call it meat for mental health, meaning I had to drastically increase my ruminant meat, meaning not the pig. Some people do pig, but it's the four stomachs, the split hooves, the cow, the sheep, the goat, deer, things like that. The organ meat I can't do. People have liver. I try to have liver. I can't do it. I want to. I can't do the organ meat, but listening to people like Dr. Terry WAHLS, she had multiple sclerosis. She was a clean, plant-eating vegan, lots of rice, lots of lentils. I learned from her, hey, she has to eat liver once a week to get rid of her MS. She was so bad, she was basically dying in bed. And before that in a wheelchair. So I learned from people like you, Eric. Thank you so much for sharing your story. But I want to ask you a little bit more. How do people reach you? Because I think we talked about this in part one, and I'll put all the links below. How do they reach you? How do you help? Do you have a website, email?
It's keto50.com, and you can find everything you need there. I have a store too where you can look up ancestral supplements. I don't sell them. It's just a company with Liver King, and you can get those organ supplements through them. And this way you can take 6 pills. It's like equal to 1 piece of liver. So you just take that with your ribeye, boom, you're getting the benefits of liver, not 100% like you would eating the liver, like when he's like a raw or something like that, but it's better than the alternative. My wife takes, every woman I know has a thyroid issue. Well, you guys have been suffering from, you guys have needed iodine your whole life. They've been telling women don't eat red meat because they got to keep your figure, right? And every woman I know has a thyroid issue. So she takes thyroid, so she doesn't have to take the medication, and it's a hormone that's been affected by our diets. And it's just, I don't know, that's what I use to help with the organ meats, like you were saying, but you can find it all, I'm of course on Twitter, Instagram, all Keto50, and, that's where you find me.
Thank you. And can you tell us what was your highest weight and what's your total
I
weight
was
loss?
248 pounds. My body fat was probably around 31%. And now I'm probably 180 pounds. Body fat's 14%. I lost 75, something like that. I did get down to 175 just to see what I look like, and I just think 180 seems to be my happy weight. I can now dabble into a little bit of sourdough bread now and then. I can do a scoop of almond butter. I used to make fat bombs and all that. Now I just take the whole spoon, I scoop it out, and then I move on with my day. I don't take a lot of time in cooking meals like I used to. Plants take a long time to break down and cook, right? It takes like 5-10 minutes, a ribeye or a burger, and I'm done. I can make a bunch of them, put them in the freezer or keep them in the fridge. So, my way of eating became totally different, and it's been quite the journey, let me tell you.
I do think for me, there are a lot of people that say, there's Chris Wark, chrisbeatcancer.com. Being vegan saved his life. My friend Renee, she's really into her vegan, and I used to be vegan, and it works for a lot of people. I feel like if you're having anxiety issues, if you're having depression, if you're having doom, paranoia, schizophrenia, bipolar, I'm now finding doctors online. There's a new book coming out. I forgot the doctor's name, but if you look at my video with Dr. Ovadia, he says there's a doctor, he names him, who's coming out with his book. He's finally revealing for 20 years, he's been using, I think, meat and butter. He's been using fats. Animal products. So if you're doing great, fine. But if you're having teeth issues, I'm doing an interview next with Dr. Al Dannenberg. He had bone cancer. He was dying. He was given 3 to 6 months to live. It's now 4 or 5 years later. He credits meat and fats, I believe, but you'll hear that story. So if you're having gut issues, IBS, IBD, Crohn's, constipation, I think you should look into potentially, if it works for you, eating meat. Because this is my theory. There are people who do not want to sacrifice animals. I understand that you're kind and you need to be vegan or vegetarian. For me, my family's health is sacrificed if we don't use the benefits of animal protein. One of my kids, the doctor, pediatrician said, oh, he might have IBD. I didn't even look into it. I just said, I'm going to change his eating. And then for me too, anxiety, doom, it was probably called depression, Eric. I didn't go to a doctor. It was bad. I didn't want to wake up, and I would never harm myself, but I have 4 kids. I was like, oh, I don't care if I get hit by a car. This is bad. And it was almost 2 years. Yeah. And I can finally say it without crying because I feel so bad for who I was. And I increased my meat. So for me, you can take a Zoloft, you can take a Lexapro, or you can potentially increase your meat drastically. So it worked for me. So if your gut's fine, your teeth are fine, your mind is fine, your skin is fine, you don't have eczema, you don't have psoriasis, you don't need to look into this. You're vegan, you're vegetarian, you're great. And it can probably save your life. But for people like me and Eric, he got rid of his PTSD. I get rid of my anxiety, depression, doom, and meat. So that's why I'm moving over to meat for mental health. And I'm not carnivore. I'm not going to be extreme. If I want, like you said, the sourdough bud, if I want to have ice cream from time to time, I'm a human being and I got to enjoy. I have friends who drink a lot, so sometimes I'll have the alcohol, even though that's sugar, which, by the way, I do think a lot of people say, I exercise, I work out, I don't know what's wrong with me. I say, do you drink alcohol? That's probably the issue why your belly is still there. Is they don't realize.
Well, I'm not gonna. I was gonna
No.
say when I was doing keto those first 2 years, I drank almost every night, and I would use vodka and sparkling water. I got off of Diet 7-Up or any other sweet mixers or anything like that because I was still battling a lot of the trauma and I had to calm my central nervous down, like I talked about in the first video. And I didn't want to be on medications. I didn't want to be anything to help me sleep, but for me, having a couple of glasses at night calmed me down. But because I was already burning so much fat throughout the day, I probably would have lost a little more weight faster. But at that point, it was a nice little happy medium for me. So I could still indulge that. No ice cream late, no Doritos late, nothing like that. If I ever got the munchies, I ate pork rinds or something like that, and that's just, there's hard, man, my nacho recipe with pork rinds, do everything you love in a nachos that you make, except put pork rinds in there instead. It's fantastic. Guacamole, sour cream and cheese, load up on the fats, man. It's awesome.
So that's my friends and acquaintances, when they have this mystery going on, they're like, I go to the gym, I work out, I think it's my thyroid. And do you drink? And really, to me, I say to my friends, you know what? Drink, because we all need pleasure. Some people use edibles. Some people use alcohol. Some people it's exercise. But basically alcohol, I say, it's like you're eating a Snicker bar.
Yeah.
You have a glass of alcohol. What's the difference between that and a Snicker bar in terms of the gut? How it looks on the outside and the inside. There's
some low carb wines out there too. They're pretty good that are, a lot of the carb keto people use that wine. I don't remember the brand, but they're out there and there's really barely any sugar in it, and you still get the alcohol buzz that you're looking for. So
yeah, I have some friends that sell that alcohol. I think still at the end of the day, even without alcohol, it's still not meat. It's still not protein. It's still a carb. Yeah. I guess it's just lower carb somehow. I don't know. It's not like they're sprinkling meat in there. So I don't really know how that works. But I want to ask you more about your mother, your police background. And there was a documentary made that involved your mom. I'd love to hear more about her experience, your experience, and how you got it to be a police officer.
Well, my mom is a retired homicide sergeant from Miami-Dade Police Department in Miami, Florida. She was a cop there from 1975 to 2003. In 1978, she joined homicide. She was a 29 or 28-year-old Hispanic. She was Cuban female, and she spoke Spanish. And back then, you were starting to see the influx of more Spanish crimes and more Spanish investigations. So they needed people to speak the language. There was cops there that spoke Spanish, but they didn't have a lot of females. And she was able to use that to go undercover, to play a call girl or a hooker in a bar, or just a floozy to hear information that these Colombians are talking in Spanish. She's got lighter hair, white skin. She's like a lighter type of Cuban. They don't even think she knows the language. And here she is just getting it all done. So she was in a documentary with my stepfather. It's called Cocaine Cowboys. It was in 2006, where they did a story about Griselda Blanco, is known as the Black Widow. She's like killed a ton of people. She was before Pablo Escobar. And she was running an organized crime ring of dealing in cocaine, but she was ruthless. Like if she sold you, or if she bought $500,000 worth of cocaine from you, and now she owed you, she'd have you whacked just to get rid of that bill. And then she took over your business. And she murdered the whole family, kids, everything. She didn't care. She was just eliminating the threat, ruthless. But her upbringing is pretty crazy too. You can see how somebody could turn into somebody like that when you see, what she grew up with in Colombia, as a 12, 13-year-old prostitute, stuff like that. So she was hardened criminal from the get-go. So now right before COVID hit, a couple of producers for the Narcos series were looking at doing like a Miami Narcos, some about those drug dealing days back in Miami. And they started looking up officers that were part of the Centec task force that was started by the government, that my mom was a part of, where she worked with DEA, FBI, and they brought all these resources together to try and investigate these Colombian organizations. Because what they showed them, they started killing all the local drug dealers. So you get bodies everywhere. We became Paradise Lost. It was on a front page of Time magazine back then. And it was hurting business, and financial, struggles led to the government getting involved. So they started this task force. Anyways, the narcos guys said, hey, we want to know about some of these cops because they want to write a script for the show. And they picked on my mom as one of the characters. So they signed her on as an advisor, her and my stepdad. They take down all their stories, all the stuff that she's 72 now. She loves talking about those days. They know all the players, all the hitmen, all the inner workings of everything. And they were just fascinated by it and getting all this information. So they've been filming. They did 6 episodes. I think it's being released in the fall. It's going to be called Griselda. And Sofia Vergara is going to be playing the godmother, Griselda Blanca. So it should have a nice little following, and hopefully she gets a couple of seasons out of it. And I got to talk to the actress playing her for like 3 hours one night, Juliana Martinez. And she was asking me questions like, why was your mom in the morning? And what were these room raids about? My mom would do room raids on my room where she'd come in and throw everything in the middle of the room that was out of place. Like all my clothes, or my belt, my toothbrush, whatever didn't belong, she'd just pile it up. I joke with her now. I think she was really looking for stuff that had some weed or something in the room, but she says, nah, the room was crazy. I was a typical boy, So I'm talking to the actress about that. And then they're asking, how did she make breakfast for you? I go, well, my grandmother around a lot, so she kind of helps. She makes piccadillo, black beans and rice, and it's just going to be really cool to see how they portray my mom. I've gotten some pictures from the actress and from the set, and they're actually going to have a little Eric Reynolds in the show. It's a 10-year. They got I think a 10 or 11-year-old actor who's playing me. They got my little. I played on a team called the Cubs, Little League baseball team. We wore green uniforms, which doesn't make any sense because the Cubs are blue. But they copied that same uniform and they got the actor dressed like that. And I guess he's a baseball player in this recreation of our life at that point. So I don't know. We'll see where this goes, man. But it's pretty exciting. It's good for my mom. She worked hard those years. She sacrificed a lot. She lost several coworkers, in a 30-year career. You lose a lot of people along the way. And, not as bad as the drug dealers. They lost everybody. But, that's that business.
If your mom's open to it, I'd love to interview her too. That'd be wild because we can get into a lot more details.
Oh, she's got a lot of it. She did one podcast about a mom, a cop whose son was shot in the line of duty. How did that affect her? And she had to change hats because her mom hat, she couldn't watch the video and stuff like that. But when she put her police hat on, she could watch the video and interact like that. So yeah, she's got it. She's good. I mean, she talked to murderers. I couldn't get away with anything in the house. I kicked the hole in the hamper once and I flipped the hamper around so she wouldn't find it. She saw that in like 5 seconds. Like, why is the hamper faced the wrong way?
Oh my goodness, that's incredible. What an incredible mother. Wow, I would love to talk to her once she sees our interview and see if she, approves of the work that we did today. Hopefully she'll talk to me because I just love stories. I often say to people, I don't have a great memory. I have a great memory for stories. Yeah.
And she used to always be so hard on me, like not super hard, but it was just her pretty much raising me. My dad was in another state with another family, another wife. I mean, he didn't leave us. I mean, they were divorced when I was like 3 years old. So he moved on. And I realized how hard she had to push and the struggles of being a female cop in the 70s. Oh my goodness. They were still slapping her in the butt walking down the hallway then.
Oh my goodness.
Hey, Toots, geez, that's my mom.
Oh my goodness. Wow. How things have changed. In case we get cut off, I'd love to we're still going to continue. So don't go away, but we might get cut off. So just know that part 3 will be coming. This is part 2. Hope you enjoyed part 1. Again, a reminder, subscribe, hit the alert button and look below. You'll find every way to contact Peace Officer Eric Reynolds. But I want to ask you, it's a really cool story how you became an officer. However, I'm hoping to see maybe there's a coincidence there about why your brother's an officer too. Can you share that story about you, maybe your brother's journey to be an officer?
Well, my dad was a military cop in the Air Force. And then you go back to our grandfathers, they've all been soldiers of some sort, right? And you go out through history, we've all been warriors. Farmers and warriors, right? All throughout history. So my brother always said it best. The way we got in law enforcement is because we got a warrior's calling deep inside of us. And you can either use that for good or bad, and I've always been one to get involved in stuff going down. I never sat around. If somebody was screaming, I'd go look. I wouldn't turn the other way. Like I said, I was catching shoplifters when I was working at an auto parts store in high school. people were stealing stuff. I was running them down. I played football then, so I was all like, macho guy and all this, but it was right and wrong. And that's how I kind of grew up. You do things, a good Samaritan, or do unto others, you have them do unto you type of stuff, and when I see stuff that's not right, I say something, and that's how my brother is. That's how my mom is. I mean, my mom once, when I was in high school, we went to one of those restaurants at the mall, and the host was about to sit, and she came right in front of us. My mom caught her and laid her to the ground because she saw the
It
eyes.
glitched out. What
recognized
happened?
Something was going on. Oh,
It glitched
the
out. You
lady
got to say
passed-
what happened.
the hostess passed out right in front of us. And my mom caught her, laid her down because she recognized the signs. Oh, this girl's about to go down. I didn't know. I would have watched her hit the ground, but that comes through training and stuff. But, you just learn to you make quick reactions. Sports helped, stuff like that too. So I think playing football, you want to be part of a gang. And you start looking around, either be a legal gang or a good gang. And that's pretty much what happened. And that's what's going on. We're fighting now. We're fighting for meat. We're fighting for food, control of what we put in our bodies. I mean, there's a fight going on right now.
Yeah. It's really incredible what's going on. I mean, I do recommend, I'm going to hopefully one day interview Dr. Gary Fettke, Fetteke. And you all should look into him. It sounds like Eric, by his nodding, knows who he is. He basically is a doctor in Australia, orthopedic surgeon. Make a long story short, he was encouraging people to go keto. And he was getting attacked by the cereal industry, like in a mafia way. Because if you start going keto or carnivore, there's a ton of the market that you're not going to be eating anymore. Those box cereals we give our children that we thought was so healthy, perhaps it's not. And that's what he was trying to say. Hey, you got arthritis and you got pain because what you're eating in the supermarket. And he was recommending keto and carnivore. But we have a few minutes left, about 2 minutes left. So I want to ask you a little bit about the RV life. For the most part, it's about mental health. I understand that generally. I don't think that was your purpose, but can you tell us maybe the cost of living? Why is it so much money saved and the mental health benefits of RV living?
Well, like right now, we're staying for free on a farm. We got full power, we got water, we got electricity, we have limited Wi-Fi, but everything else works. We got a gorgeous view. And all it costs me is to maybe work half a day feeding the pigs, feeding the cows, which I like doing. It's not really hard work. You're learning. My kids are learning, but usually the RV life, most RV places are anywhere, you can book a whole site for a whole year, sometimes depending on where you're at, for $2,000 to $5,000 a year, and you have a full-time place. So what do you think? You're not paying property tax. You're not paying all the other bills. I mean, I had to leave Florida, South Florida at least, and sell our house to get into this life. My pension leaving early wasn't going to be enough to cover it. It's just too expensive down there. And now you see what's going on with gas prices, food industry. I mean, we're at the perfect spot. We found this luckily. I just looked up grass-fed farm in this area because we had a cops and campers event, that retreat program I was telling you about. And we called them up. Do you need any help? And they're like, yeah, we've been looking for it. Come on over. And next thing you know, we became friends. And now I'm learning how to drive bobcats and, like I was saying, chasing steers around and we slaughtered a pig once. That was intense. So stuff I've never done. Everything here I've never done. He'll ask me, he's like, you ever change wheels on the skid steer? I go, nope. And next thing you know, I'm pulling tires, these gigantic tires off these things. I'm getting a huge farmer boy workout. So great workouts on a farm. Go volunteer at any local farmers market, meet them, get to the farm, see how they do it. They love to talk to people about it. It's got to be grass fed, get off that corn.
So we only have under a minute left. So my last question, and I hope everyone stays around for other videos and, like and subscribe and hit the bell. My last question before we get cut off, you said you had PTSD. You went through a severe shooting as a peace officer. How has keto helped you? Do you have any PTSD? Do you have any sleep problems?
I still have to learn how to dance with it. It's not going away overnight, but I know how to manage it a lot better now. And I'm not as inflamed overall in my whole body. So even my brain's not as inflamed anymore because our brain is mostly cholesterol. It's a fat. So we need to feed it, and since I've been doing that, man, it's like it opened a pipeline from my gut to my brain, and you realize there's a direct link with what you're putting in your body and how your mind's going to react.